Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting was founded by medical doctors to provide the medical community with objective findings of unethical and illegal organ harvesting. China is the only country in the world, as you have seen, where organ harvesting is systematically state-sanctioned to this degree, and even though Chinese government admits using organs from death row inmates, our previous speakers have clearly stated that the majority of sustainable organs for transplantation in China come from prisoners of conscience. These are Falun Gong practitioners, as well as Uyghurs and Tibetans. These are Chinese citizens who have been illegally detained for their beliefs and willfully killed for profit. No other country in the world has developed its transplantation facilities so rapidly as China has in the last decade, and is able to offer corresponding organs within 2 to 4 weeks, despite the absence of the official organ donation program. And even though the Chinese government hides behind its unsuccessful pilot organ donation scheme that was organized a year ago, or nearly 2 years now, we find no reassurance at all in the recent declaration of a new state organ donation program by Huang. And also the fact that there's a second controversial and unethical organ donation program organized by the Chinese Red Cross, which offers financial incentives for the organ donation. Since both David Matas and Kilgore report in 2006, a succession of laws against organ harvesting and transplant tourism, and the phasing out of organ harvesting from executed prisoners have been announced but never actually enforced. These steps rather serve to appease or even deceive the international community on what's actually going on in China. The consequences of these abuses have grown over the geographic borders of China, as patients in need from all over the world wished to travel to China and pay for their organs. Western specialists, surgeons have been invited to participate in organized operations, booked months in advance, and become morally implicated in these unlawful acts. Our ethical values require from us to help those who are subject to crimes against humanity, and we have a responsibility to help those who don't have a voice to speak for themselves. We must not betray our own medical legal ethics to maintain commercial and political relations with China. Since the Declaration of Istanbul, which is a grouping of different transplant societies around the world, dozens of Chinese medical articles are refused publication because they cannot prove that they have not used organs from death row inmates. And also Chinese surgeons, as we've already heard today, Chinese surgeons are refused when applying for transplantation training in foreign countries because they cannot ensure that they will not participate in unethical practices. There have been advances throughout the medical community, but without actual legislation, the medical community cannot fully enforce the necessary sanctions to end Chinese organ harvesting of prisoners of conscience. I'll briefly mention the Australian Senate because it's important again. The Australian Senate unanimously passed a motion by Senator John Madigan urging the government to oppose the practice of unethical organ harvesting in China and to support the action of the European Parliament and the United Nations in addressing the practice of organ trafficking. The motion comes at a time when the Australian David Shoebridge, member of the New South Wales Parliament, is proposing a new transplant organ trafficking law. Malaysia, for example, has enforced a transplant registry for all foreign transplantations to try and render transparent what is forcefully obscured by the Chinese government. As David Matas mentioned, all the figures that we would like to analyze about the number of executed prisoners are totally unavailable. The French Biomedicine Agency annually carries out voluntary questionnaires to assess the numbers of French patients going abroad to be transplanted. However, the questionnaires are voluntary, and so it all depends on whether the patient wants to reveal or not that they've participated in these organ harvesting. That is one of the consequences of what happened in 2010 with Valérie Boyer, that everyone is in France anyway, or certain people have become more aware of this fact of what's going on. After several highly successful worldwide petitions against unethical organ harvesting, new witnesses such as Enver Tohti and the budding legislative efforts that David Cale-Gore has just described are beginning to have profound effects on the major governments of the world, as well as the World Medical Association, the United Nations, the World Health Organization. We may be reaching a tipping point where now they may react to this kind of pressure. If Scotland was able to make a stand on this issue, then perhaps other European countries may consider revisiting and insisting on these issues. In conclusion, the Chinese ruling authorities show no convincing intention of stopping illegal organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience and continue to deny its existence. Again, this is just to come back to to Ethan's point, the difference between condemned prisoners, the organ donation program that's just starting in China, and the prisoners of conscience are three different categories that are very clear, but the Chinese government would like to just amalgamate everything into one, again, to confuse everybody's mind. The time is right for all governments to review their health and foreign policies and to condemn and stop this most horrific crime against humanity and help China to attain international acceptance as an ethical and a law-abiding country. Thank you.